Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm prepping your QMS for EU MDR. My name is John Spear, and I'm the founder and VP of Quality and Regulatory at Greenlight Guru and the moderator for today's event. We've got a really special presentation for you today. I know our presenter, Kyle Rose, is really looking forward to sharing with you his insights and experience into everything EU MDR as it relates to your quality management system. Before we dive too deep into today's presentation and introduce our presenter and his consultancy, Rook Quality Systems, I'm going to touch on a few items real quick. First, today's webinar is going to run for about 60 minutes in total and will include a Q&A session at the end where Kyle has been kind enough to stick around to answer several of your questions. If we don't get to all of them, that's okay. We'll get those questions to Kyle. You'll know how to contact him as well to reach out to him on your EU MDR QMS questions. But throughout today's presentation, I would encourage you to submit your questions throughout as they come up in the box on the right-hand side, and we will get to as many of them, as I said, as time permits. And secondly, I just want to share a few words about Greenlight Guru and why we put on these free training sessions. If you've been on one of our training sessions before, then you know that we put these on because improving the quality of life is our mission at Greenlight Guru, likely a mission that's similar to many of you on today's webinar. Anything that we can do as an organization that helps device makers bring safer, life-changing devices to market quicker and with less risk aligns with that mission. Constantly looking for ways to fulfill that mission, whether it's through hosting these free training sessions, through partnering with world-class medical device consultants like Kyle Rose and Rook Quality Systems, or through our award-winning quality management software platform. If you'd like to learn more about why medical device companies all over the globe in over 600 cities from over 50 countries are ditching their broken paper-based quality systems and outdated legacy software for a new modern quality management system designed exclusively from the ground up for medical device companies by medical device professionals, then I would encourage you to go over to www.greenlight.guru after today's presentation and request your free personalized one-on-one demo. In this, you will learn how the very best medical device companies are leveraging the Greenlight Guru EQMS software to gain ISO 13485 2000 certification, breeze through audits, and push beyond just compliance and focusing on true quality. And yes, when it comes to things EU MDR, we're ready to help you through that challenge as well. So like I said, if you're interested in learning how Greenlight Guru might be able to help your device company, be sure to go to www.greenlight.guru after today's session and schedule your personalized demo. Okay, so let's get on to today's presentation. Let me give a proper introduction to your presenter, a longtime partner of ours here at Greenlight Guru, Kyle Rose. Kyle is a medical device expert specializing in development of efficient quality systems for a small and startup medical device company. As president of Rook Quality Systems, Mr. Rose works as the contract quality manager for multiple device companies, overseeing overall quality strategy and ensuring compliance through documentation and auditing services. Mr. Rose is a certified quality auditor and has regulatory and submission experience for a variety of markets, including FDA, CE marking, Health Canada, and CFDA. Mr. Rose encourages the simplification of quality systems to reduce the quality burden and improve compliance through training and efficient QMS design. So without further ado, let me hand it over to today's presenter, Kyle Rose.
Thanks a lot, John. Thanks again for having us on this webinar. We always love doing these with Greenlight. We get a great turnout and a lot of good feedback. So thanks again to you and the rest of the Greenlight team for inviting us. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump in. So as John said, the focus of this is preparing your QMS for the EU MDR. So there's been a lot of information out there about what to do with your technical file, how it's going to change your classification of your device, but we wanted to provide some more focus specifically on changes in the MDR and how those to relate to your QMS, what you're going to have to do, what new procedures you're going to have to create, or updates that you're going to have to make to your procedure. We've always seen the issues with audits where you get a finding because you didn't have this part of the standard, you didn't properly describe this. So we want to make sure that nobody has that issue. There's no findings from any of the minor things related to properly describing within your quality system what you're complying with in the regulation. Just a general overview about RIC quality systems. Some of this John covered on, but we are a consulting firm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. We help startup to medium-sized med device companies with a lot of different quality actions, including initial quality system design and updates for different transitions, including MDR, design history file, technical file creation, risk management, software validation. We've got a really good software validation team. So if you're developing software as a device, or if you are needing help validating some software you're using in your quality system, definitely reach out to us. We provide training. We've recently added some good training PowerPoints to our website as well, so look over that if you need help with internal auditor training or calibration training or validation training. John did a great job of reviewing my background. I've worked in all aspects of medical device and have been working a lot with startup companies as kind of this contract quality manager role. One thing is we do, if you are getting audited by the FDA or by your ISO auditor for CE or MedSAP, you can have RIC quality system consultants with you to help you through that audit process as well. That's the thing we offer to a lot of our clients, and they love that. It gives them a peace of mind when they're getting ready for their audit. Some other things, focus on Greenlight Guru. Obviously, we teamed up with them 4 or 5 years ago now to we thought it was a great system, and they really align with what we do, is try to make your quality system as efficient as possible and improve compliance with efficiency. So just a general overview of the MDR. So the initial regulation was released in 2017, and they've given us a few years to actually comply with it. So actual deadline is 2020. The next few slides show some overview of that timeline. The standard itself is much longer than the previous MDD directive, over 4 times longer. It's got an increased emphasis on risk and safety, so you'll see those a lot. A lot of people know, the update to ISO 1345 in 2016. The main focus on that was incorporating risk in all aspects of your quality system. The MDR really does a good job of presenting the same information as well as expanding on how to implement that and how that's needed for your CE mark. There's also some changes to the scope. So previously, for CE mark, certain devices that didn't have medicinal application were not considered medical devices. Certain accessories were not considered medical devices. A lot of that's changing. So a lot of previously unclassified devices are now going to fall under the scope of the MDR. So that's a big change. I'm sure there's some of you on today that didn't have the burden of a quality system previously because you fell outside of the MDD, but are now going to have to take on, all of the previous MDD and all of the new things that are encapsulated in MDR. There's also broader definitions and scope. They've also changed the previously essential requirements. Now they've expanded them to the general safety and performance requirements. Increase in requirement for clinical data. So this is big for a lot of companies that are trying to put their first device or first devices on the market. Previously, the technical file review and the CER review could be done with more literature research and things like that. It looks like a lot of that is now going to need clinical data. There's definitely some interpretation to be done on that as well and see how it's actually implemented. But that's what it reads for most of the people and most of the training I've done. Also some reporting time changes for different incidents and adverse events and how you report them and things like that. So we're going to cover a lot of this in more detail. This is kind of general overview of the new MDR. Here's the timeline. So again, 2017 is when they issued this. May 25th, 26th is kind of the deadline for the transfer. So not that long away, only like 15 months from now when this all switches over. So there is some sort of grandfather period depending on when your recertification of your device, your technical file reviews were completed. If that was in 2018 or 2019, then you have longer to transfer those devices over into the full scope of MDR. Working with your notified body to make sure you understand that is encouraged. There's also some stuff that not all of the notified bodies are going to make it to MDR, and what they can review or audit as far as types of devices is also under more scrutiny. So there might be situations where companies might have to find a new notified body. So definitely make sure you're communicating, if you have a product on the market currently, that you're communicating with them, and know your timelines for your specific devices, as well as know that they are still going to be able to support you for MDR come 2020. In regards to the quality system, so even though there is this grandfather period for actual devices and meeting those requirements, all of the quality system requirements have to be implemented by May 26, 2020. So that's really the focus of what we're doing today. Is your audit after May 26, 2020 is going to be to MDR. So if you have CE, your quality system is going to be audited to MDR. And this is replacing MDD. This is what the new standard is. It seems very short, but this has been out since 2017. So you need to have everything in place over the next 15 months. So in general, we recommend creating some sort of gap analysis and starting to think about this now. This training webinar is a good start, but also want to increase the idea and emphasis on really putting effort into this process and this transition. It's coming up fast. We know, obviously, Rook has been helping with a lot of transitions, both for 1345, 2016, and MedSap, and this is just the latest one. So if you guys have questions, obviously, Rook is here to help. Just a general overview of some of the sections we're going to cover. A lot of the stuff in the actual MDR standard jumps around a bit, so we're kind of covering different sections. It's not a specific order through the standard, but it is going through some of the things we highlighted ourselves as big changes and things that are going to require more time from your quality team or quality department. So we have updates to complaint handling, vigilance, and this is also post-market stuff as well. Documentations for economic operators. What exactly is an economic operator? We'll talk about that, as well as how that ties to supply chain. Updates to comply with the new SPRs, incorporating UDI and EUDAMED. Also talk about what actually those mean. And then procedures for regulatory compliance and strategy. And then if you are an implantable device, there's new requirements for those and kind of how that ties to Class 3 as well. There's some additional notes at the end. We're not really going much into IVDR, which is also being updated, but there are a few things on that as well. Here is the general overview of the QMS. So this is from the MDR standards, outlining what your quality system should address and listing each aspect. So the things in bold are things that are new for MDR, not specifically tied previously to the ISO or the MDD requirements. So this is obviously the general safety and performance and how new those are, making sure you comply with those. Other big one is UDI. So previously Europe did not have UDI requirements. There are plenty of companies in the US that are already complying with that. There are some differences, but if you just have a CE mark or EU based quality system, then this is new to you. You need to implement those procedures and get compliant with UDI for your devices. So with the compliance and vigilance, the big encompassing thing is post-market surveillance. So there's a lot of more information on this. The European model really wants to go to a more life cycle based approach. So more emphasis on continually updating your information, your risk, your technical file, and ongoing evaluation of your devices. So this really ties to your post-market surveillance. So initially, you're going to need to have a post-market surveillance plan in place. So this should be an actual document or an actual procedure that you have in your quality system. So you'll see up here in the top right, is it a new SOP or an update to an SOP? And that kind of gives you a hint on what you need to do to get your quality system ready. Also, same inclusion of the post-market surveillance report, as well as having a form or a template for completing that report. Consistent updates to risk. This ties again to 1345, your clinical evaluation and your technical file from your post-market feedback. So an ongoing loop as you are getting more feedback about your device, you're implementing that information to see, does it affect any of the severities or probabilities of your known hazard situations and harms? Has it created any new hazard situations or harms? And how does that affect your device? Are there certain situations where you need to incorporate new design control? And this is one of the things, that really ties to what the Greenlight guys are doing, is having a interactive design risk matrix where you can go back and edit these things and change risk level history and create new sources of control. So if you're using Greenlight, this fits in with what you're doing. If you're interested in Greenlight, definitely ask them about how this can fit into their design control and risk. This is also new for Class 1 devices. So previously, Class 1 devices didn't have as much requirements around post-market surveillance. So this is an update for those as well. Completely new, is this periodic safety update report, PSUR. So this is for Class 2A, 2B, and Class 3 devices. So all new from MDR. You should have, of course, procedures and SOPs for this. It must be updated annually. So this is something you have to be on top of, like your audits or your management review. You have to make sure you're proactively updating this. For 2A, it's every 2 years, but still, this is something you should be reviewing with your quality system, make sure it's up to date for your devices. Within this safety report, you'll have the main findings of post-market clinical follow-up, conclusions of risk-benefit determination. So this is feeding back to post-market surveillance as well. And then a new thing that's not typically reviewed on the CE mark side is sales volumes and usage frequency. So this one I'm definitely interested in how companies are going to implement it, as well as how it's going to be interpreted and reviewed by the notified bodies and the auditors on what exactly information you can get for usage frequency and usage environment of your devices, and how you're going to report that. So definitely, I think this is something that companies should start thinking about now to make sure they have a sufficient plan in place, and if possible, start getting some of this data back so they can start analyzing it and determine new ways or more effective ways to get this information back regarding their device. Another thing is for Class 3 and implants. So you have to submit this safety report to UDIMAD database. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. UDIMAD is this giant database that has all this information. I assume it's going to be similar to the FDA database that has 510Ks and the MOD database and all those things. I think they're trying to create something similar on the European side for all the devices covered with CE mark. For incidents and field safety corrective actions, most likely, if you have CE mark, you already have this described in your procedure, but there are some minor updates to this as well. So making sure that you have reviewed MDR and incorporated these new timeline for incidents and field safety corrective actions into your procedures. Make sure your SOP outlines the statistical analysis of these two, and that you incorporate risk into the investigation of these, and that it's a continual loop of, you get incidents or reports back, and you're able to incorporate that into your risk of your device. Templates or forms should be created if they haven't already been, and make sure they're compliant with the latest version in MDR. supply chain. So this is another one that's really big, a big update, a big change, and it affects a lot of companies. So it's not just the company that's making the device. So this also affects importers, distributors, and what's required for them on complying with MDR. So this is definitely a big change. There's a lot more information that is required to be documented by each level of economic operators, as well as much more requirements around traceability. So tied to the UDI, they want to know kind of where devices are going and who's touching them, and making sure that at each level there's a check that you're complying, that each economic operator is verifying that the devices are complying with MDR regulations and the safety and performance regulations. So potentially, this is going to be a new SOP if you're a manufacturer, but for some distributors and importers that might not have had a quality system previously, they're going to have a whole new quality system that outlines their role in the supply chain and with the devices that they either import or distribute, and how they review them and check that they're in compliance. And it's not just the device itself, it's the packaging, the labeling, all of those things. There's also a new requirement that importers have to add an importer label to devices as well. So if you're the initial importer of a device into Europe, which I think can definitely affect a lot of the companies that Rook works with here in the US that have CE mark and sell to Europe, their initial importer will have to add their own label to those devices or that packaging as well. So that's a whole new change, as well as new amount of burden on the distributors and importers. So I definitely think you should be proactive in talking with your economic operators and making sure that they are aware of these and that they are going to comply with them. So I definitely think it's going to be a bigger burden on them. There might need to be some renegotiation or training on what's required, and making sure they have that, as well as the requirements of your quality agreement. The quality agreements were a big emphasis in 1345/2016, and those might have to be reevaluated to make sure that for devices sold into Europe with CE mark, that all of the new regulations for supply chain and economic operators are covered. Also, so everyone involved is going to have to register in this UDAMED database as well. There's one single number that's going to cover every device, as well as each economic operator that will have to be uploaded as well. But all of these economic operators, so manufacturers, authorized reps, importers, distributors, all of them will have to be within the system as well. So that's definitely a big change, and some of this involves updating their information periodically as well. So UDI and labeling. So UDI requirements, they are detailed in the standard as well. Big change, obviously, no UDI requirements previously. Typical path, if you've done it in the US, it's get your UDI code or GUDID code from whatever, maybe GS1 is a common one, and you then have to have that code embedded in the barcode or QR code for your device, and make sure the information tied to your device is current on all levels of packaging and labeling. And then you have to, part of the requirements for MDR is that you have to define storage of UDI at each level. Electronically is preferred, and that's straight from the standard. So you want to have an electronic method of tracking what UDIs you've issued, as well as updates to UDIs and where those devices are. And then your SOP, so this is a new SOP. Your SOP should also detail the process of adding this UDI information into the UDAMED database. Some of the stuff around UDAMED is tricky. I think that's coming up in another slide. UDAMED's not finished yet. It's not going to be released until later this year. So, having or drafting a procedure that outlines how you're going to interact with UDAMED is a good step now, potentially a good start, but we're not exactly sure what exactly UDAMED is going to look like or how it's going to work. So there's still some waiting on that part of it as well. And again, up-to-date list, so continually updating of all UDIs should be maintained by the company. There's also some talk that this should be maintained by each level of economic operator as well, what UDIs they went through. And there's also sections that outline that hospitals or people actually, end users, should keep a record of all the UDIs for devices that went to their facility as well, which is, again, a big change. So this standard, as you can tell already, covers a lot. There's a lot of new stuff, and there's a lot of implementation things going on behind the scenes currently. I'm sure there's going to be some headaches around getting this implemented, but definitely want everybody to be aware of this so that we can be out in front as the manufacturers or potential distributors of these devices. Again, another new SOP, so regulatory compliance. So you should have within your quality system a defined strategy for regulatory compliance. So this is something that you are going to discuss in your management reviews, and you are going to outline a plan. You're going to have procedures and potentially minutes or forms around this. I like to think of it as kind of like the management representative role as well. So you'll have a person defined as the responsible person for regulatory compliance. And this person, it should be documented who it is and what their roles are. And the standard actually outlines what requirements are needed. So they need to have some sort of either degree or sufficient work experience in regulatory to be able to meet the requirements of this part of the standard. It also outlines that if you are a small or startup company, you do not necessarily need to have this person on staff, but that's when you need to consult with somebody like Rook or another consultant that has the expertise, and you can reach out to them for your regulatory compliance. So defining this in job descriptions, defining it in your org chart or your management review minutes on who is responsible for regulatory compliance, what their role is, and if it's more than one person, kind of outlining who's responsible for what. Some additional details on this role. It's responsible for post-market surveillance obligations. Reporting obligations are fulfilled, that the technical documentation and declaration of conformity are kept up to date, and that the device is appropriately controlled within the quality system. So general quality system stuff, but additional, more detailed things that should be defined in that job description as well. Some new things on document storage. So, now they're saying that at 10 to 15 years after the last device has been placed on the market, you have to maintain your documents for that device, all your documentation. So all your records, your quality control records, your UDI records, all those have to be maintained. This is where the idea of electronic document control and storage tied, a lot of what Greenlight's doing a great job of is, really, I think, essential if you want to comply with this. There should also be in your procedures or in your plans a plan of compliance with these storage or retention timelines if the company was to fail or go bankrupt. So you need to have that defined in your quality system to make sure that worst case scenario, you place some devices on the market and it didn't get the response that you were hoping for, not as much buy-in, but you still have to maintain these records for potentially 15 years after you've ended the company. So there should be a plan in place for that as well. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to enforce that, but is something to document. All right, making the essential more general. So I'm sure everybody that has done CE mark, has a CE mark device in the market, is familiar with the essential requirements and their role in your technical file and your risk analysis and making sure your device complies with that. Typically, it's some sort of checklist or document where you're walking through each step and showing, if it applies, if it doesn't apply, and then, how you meet that part of the essential requirement, either with risk or testing or materials or whatever it may be, depending on the section, how you meet that part of the essential requirements. So that same workflow is going to go on with the SPRs, GSPRs. It's just making sure you've updated your documents and your records to comply with the new regulation. So new checklist and forms should be completed. It's up to you if this is a new SOP versus an older SOP. There are, I think, potential for companies that have multiple devices on the market where some might be grandfathered in longer than others, and some might still be under the essential requirements, and some might be needed to be updated sooner to the SPRs. So there might be a situation where you have two procedures and two sets of templates and forms. But just make sure you're planning that within your quality system and outlining it with the scope of your devices. Some of the stuff, just general regarding the SPRs is how are they identified? This is in your high-level SOP. How are they risk assessed and how are they met? So that's high level, and then you need to have all the forms and templates in place to actually document that you did these things. Here's some more detail on what's changing. So it is a very, very long list. We could do a whole webinar if we wanted to on the SPRs and how to incorporate them into your device and process, but just wanted to highlight a few things that we thought are important and that are some changes. And again, we do have a template you can buy from Rook as well that outlines the differences between essential requirements and the new SPRs. Main things though, we got risk management plan per device. That typically is already done with 1345, but you make sure you have that. Analyzing all risks, including foreseeable misuse. So just greater risk analysis and more broadening of the scope of your risk analysis as well. Reviewing of risk controls and then verification of the risk controls and any potential new risks that could happen from risk controls. Post-market risk management, so this ties back to the post-market clinical follow-up stuff and post-market surveillance, making sure that you are completing that loop of ongoing risk analysis and feedback. Risk-benefit analysis for each hazard and overall residual risk. A lot of the stuff that was in MDD regarding reducing risks as far as possible and make sure your device is state-of-the-art, those are continued and expanded on in MDR. So those didn't go away, those are still there. It's just expanding on those and making sure you add on everything else that's in MDR as well. And then training on device safety as needed, that's more of a newer one. So potentially reviewing your device in some sort of risk analysis method and determining whether or not you need training in addition to all of the IFU and labeling and warning symbols and cautions that you provide. Which is a good segue into labeling. So labeling has a good amount of updates as well. So within the MDR standard, there's sections that outline new information on instructions for use and labeling. And then there's also a whole section in the SPRs that goes through labeling as well. Additional requirements, these should be documented SPR checklist, provide warnings on, or provide information on warnings, precautions, and contraindications. And they are saying they want this on labeling and IFU. So if you're familiar with the regulatory aspect of documenting all these things in your label or in your IFU, which is typically where all the warnings, precautions, and contraindications are, a lot of people are having a hard time imagining how all that can fit on a label that would be on the packaging or on the device itself. So again, I think there's still some interpretation on that and how that's going to be reviewed and audited, but that is clearly defined in the standard that they want all that information in the labeling. Another big one is IFU should be provided in electronic format on your website. So all companies should have their instruction for use and label available to the public for review or reference if they're using that device. For the Class 1 and implantable devices, they are saying that they want a summary of safety and clinical performance as well provided within the labeling. So this is tied more to your risk-benefit analysis, summary of your clinical trials, and any performance testing, external testing you've done. There needs to be a summary provided with that as well. So not just a big SOP update to incorporate all this into your labeling procedures and design control procedures around labeling, but also a big implementation update as well. So definitely, as you're planning your transition to MDR, outlining what resources are needed to go into each one of these aspects. I think this labeling update is going to be a big draw and big need for a lot of companies and take a lot of time. UDAMED. So we've talked about this a little bit in some of the previous slides and how this ties to different sections. So the UDAMED in general is the big electronic database that companies will be responsible for uploading information, notified bodies and competent authorities will be reviewing information, and then users of devices, doctors, end users will be able to go review information here as well. Here's the general timeline of when it should be up. So they're saying May 2019, so 3 months from now. And then September 2019, the system's getting audited. And then the plan is for this to go live March 2020, a few months before the cutoff deadlines for MDR. So new SOP on how you're going to comply with each section of UDAMED and how you are going to maintain uploading information, uploading UDIs, and monitoring UDAMED as well. It's important to incorporate all that stuff in your quality system. And then not just for the manufacturer, this also ties, like I said, with the economic operator, the registration in UDAMED, as well as upload of information to this as well, and then ties back to potential post-market surveillance, the periodic safety update report, post-market clinical follow-up, safety and performance, labeling, UDI, a lot of that stuff will have to be uploaded into UDAMED as well. So, this could even be outside of a new SOP. This could be a new role where somebody in your system is tied to just, or in your company is tied to just updating and working with the new UDAMED database. All right, so for companies that are working with implantable devices, so previously there was some changes, or there were some changes including MDR around classification. Now it's pretty much all implantables are pretty much class 3 at this point. With that, you'll have to have an implant card for each device that is implanted in a patient. These should be created and reviewed under design, control, and risk to make sure they have all the information, and all updates to this implant card should be available on the website as well as UDIMED. This is going to be a new SOP if you are making implantable devices. Make sure that you have reviewed this section in detail and that you are complying with this in your procedures. Additional notes. So there are, outside of implants, there are additional requirements for devices using human or animal tissue, and make sure you're complying with that, not only in the SPR section, but also in the main text of the MDR. Same with medicinal substances being used in devices. So, potential catheters that are coated with drugs or combination devices, making sure that you are complying with the new updates in the MDR for that. A big thing that's kind of, could get overlooked is you're going to have to update your declaration conformity. So you have to say that you now conform with the MDR versus MDD. So that's, all companies, you're going to have to do this. So make sure you're thinking about that. It seems simple, but you don't want the auditor, once they're there, to ask for your declaration of conformity and it show old standards. Another thing we didn't touch much on that's important to say here is the new program for harmonized standards and common specifications. So everybody, I think, that has a CE mark device should be somewhat familiar with harmonized standards and the CE mark or EU rules around harmonized standards, and making sure your device complies with those. As a new standard gets published, reviewing that standard and making sure that you comply with it, or if new testing needs to be done on your device to the new standard, that you go ahead and get that testing done. So they're pretty proactive with that. There's also a new term called common specification that they are creating. A lot of these have not been done yet, so it's kind of hard to really define how you're going to work towards these and how you're going to implement these when they're not published yet. But the common specifications are for common types of device that member states and competent authorities want to outline competent or common specifications that companies will then show their device meets. So for a standard type of device, showing how you meet these requirements for material strength or electronic safety or whatever it might be, defining and showing that you meet that. So that will be a new procedure as well, is outlining how you plan to review for common specifications when they get created and if they affect your device, as well as making sure that you comply with those. And that's tied a little bit to the clinical evidence and getting new devices on the market. You could also show that they meet the common specifications, but it's not very well defined at this point. Some things tied to IVDR updates. So MDR kind of removed any diagnostic IVD stuff from their scope and made this new IVDR standard. Again, this could be its own webinar, lots tied to this as well. Some just general updates, so separate SOPs for companion diagnostics and how they are used with the system and how they are tested, SOPs and processes in place for product conformity and verification, and then SOPs and processes for type examination as well. So definitely, if you are an IVD manufacturer or somebody that's within that scope, economic operators for IVDs, making sure you are reviewing that one in detail. We've got some experience with that, so you can reach out to us as well if you have questions on the IVDR stuff. And that's it. I know we covered lots. We put a limit at 6 questions per participant, but make sure follow up with Rook if you guys have any questions. We've created this MDR transition checklist free on our website. So it outlines a lot of stuff we've done today, kind of like a gap analysis or an audit checklist that you can go through your own quality system and use that as a tool to begin preparing to get compliant with the MDR in the next 15 months. Like I said, it's coming up fast. So definitely want to put in time and resources to complying with the new standard.
All right, so folks, if you haven't typed in 6 questions, be sure you get to do that. That's funny, Kyle. All right, and thank you so much. I want to thank you for putting this together. I know firsthand how much time, effort, and energy it takes to put together a webinar, the slide deck, and presentation, and then to deliver that. So thank you for that. We do have a few questions, and I'm sure since you gave everybody permission to ask quite a few more, we might get a few more, but we do have a few minutes. So let's dive into the questions. First question comes from Brian. Brian asks, are combination drug device products covered by the EU MDR? And if so, what specific area covers this? And for what it's worth, Kyle, Brian's question was the first one in before we got started today. So you probably covered a lot of that, but maybe just a brief recap on some of those things.
Yeah, so that part is covered. I think we touched it a little bit in some additional notes on devices that are using medicinal substances, and it is tied in the SPR section as well, which is Annex 1, and kind of going through that and seeing, how your device is defined and what type of medicinal substances you're using, as well as is it more of a drug or more of a device. There's a lot of detail in MDR on that.
All right, thanks. Reminder, folks, quite a few of you have asked, and as always, the answer is yes, absolutely. You can get a copy of the slides. Yes, as always, you'll be able to watch the replay of this. Expect an email probably later today, certainly before the end of the week, with that information, and you'll be able to go, if your colleagues wanted to see this and didn't have a chance to sign up, they'll be able to go to the Greenlight Guru website, www.greenlight.guru. You can go to the resources page and watch a replay of this webinar and any other webinar we've ever done, free on demand at your leisure. So yes, of course, we're going to give you those slides. All right, so Sharon asked, kind of a twist on the last question, what must be considered for combo products having a device component?
I think typically just reviewing the risk of both the device component and the medicinal component and how that relates to safety and performance of the device is just kind of the general answer, and doing a deeper review in the standard. If they want to follow up with us after this, we can look into their device itself and see kind of where that falls within the MDR.
All right, so the next question comes from Johanna. Johanna asks, if the product certification is not due until after May 2020, do we still need to be fully compliant to the new QS requirements by May 2020?
Yeah, so your audit after 2020, May 2020, will be to MDR. So not auditing MDD anymore. All the QMS requirements are in place. One of the things that didn't get in here is there is a timeline for UDI. Class 3 is 2021, Class 2 is 2023, Class 1 is 2025. But back to the original question, yes, QMS 2020, have to have all this in place.
Yeah, and if you're ISO 1345 certified, I don't remember the exact clause number. I'll put Kyle on the spot, he probably does, but there's and I'm paraphrasing here, but there's a clause in 1345-2016 that talks about being compliant to the applicable regulatory requirements. So it's kind of an open-ended catch-all clause, and it's not very prescriptive, but this is one of those cases where 1345 from that perspective, EU MDR is going to apply, because if you're in the European market, then you need to comply with the applicable regulatory requirements. So just there is a provision in 1345-2016 that addresses this, even though obviously 1345 was published before the EU MDR. All right, so next question comes from Julie. Julie asks, does the PSUR not replace the PMS report?
No, they're two separate things. So the PSUR covers more feedback stuff, as well as overview of findings of PMCF and any, like a re-review of your risk-benefit analysis, as well as the new one that's pretty different is the sales volume and usage frequency, and evaluating that within the risk of your device as well.
Okay, so Aaron asked, we were just recertified to MDD. In 2020, will our surveillance audit be to MDD or MDR?
It depends if it's before May or after May 26, but after May, it's all going to MDR. The technical files or devices reviewed may be part of that grandfathered in, where they might not have to be compliant with MDR until 2022 or 2023. But the quality system itself, regardless of if you've done a surveillance or recertification, will be to MDR.
And there's kind of a big elephant in the room on this topic, folks, that Kyle and I, and frankly, nearly all the industry are kind of waiting on. There's not a lot of resources from auditing organizations, from notified bodies who have been through everything that they need to go through in order to have their proper accreditation. So, as we speak today, there is only one entity who has been through that process. So my advice to you is to contact your auditing organization, is to contact your notified bodies and get the lowdown from them, what their plan is, what the timeline is, and that sort of thing, so that you can plan accordingly.
Yeah, that's the scary part. There's a lot that's still unknown, and the one company that has passed, I have heard that they're not doing any more new MDD audits as of like now. So for them, if you're a new company, you have to do MDR, from what I understand. But I don't know if that's what I heard. I don't know if that's accurate, but
yeah, I've heard similar things. But the best way, Kyle and I, as much as we would love to answer those specific questions, the people who hold those answers are your auditing organizations and your notified bodies. So definitely reach out to them. All right. So John, not me, but another John asked a question: is PMS report same as PMCF?
Similar, but not exactly the same. Post-market surveillance is more just general, all of the returns and complaints and stuff like that, whereas your clinical follow-up is more detailed on clinical aspects with the device.
All right. So next question. Aaron asked, and may we have an example of statistical analysis applied to a reportable incident? I don't know if you have something or that you could share, or maybe it's best if Aaron reaches out to you directly, because I can imagine
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I think just in general is, just leveraging, so you know how many devices you've sold and over the past 3 or 4 years, reviewing that information and comparing that to the amount of incidents you've had and doing that sort of statistical analysis in your management review or in part of your post-market clinical follow-up and surveillance. So kind of leveraging all the information you have, and you can also review other devices. So that's kind of the post-market surveillance part, is not specifically just your device, but you can also review similar devices and any incidents they might have had as well. So I would say, leveraging information you have as well as post-market surveillance for other devices. I know like the MON database is a good tool for this, and hopefully the UDAMED database will be as well. And then using that to relate to incidents and occurrence.
All right. So, folks, from time to time, there are, if I mispronounce your name, I mean no disrespect. I apologize in advance. This is one of those cases, so I'll do my best with the name. Question comes from Abhijit. Abhijit asks, what is UDI full form, please? I assume that the acronym UDI may not be a known acronym.
Oh, Universal Device Identification. Sorry.
Yeah, and no, that's okay. So UDI is something that's been in place from an FDA perspective now for a few years, depending on some device classes longer than others, but basically it's something that is unique to your product, and it pulls in different attributes for identification purposes. Like I
Sorry,
said,
it's
FDA has had
unique
this in place.
device,
Yeah, unique.
not
Yeah.
universal. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I mean, by the time EU puts it in place, I mean, it's the EU
Yeah, exactly.
getting more universal. But there are some guidances that they're a little confusing, I'll confess. But if you could if you like search for FDA UDI, you'll get a lot of context around that. Um, Kyle mentioned GS1. There are a few other entities out
Yeah,
there that.
CS1 actually has a really good guidance as well on UDI tied to medical devices that I was researching recently for one of our clients. So some of the
Yeah,
FDA stuff is pretty kind of high level and doesn't give a lot of detail on actually implementing
yeah.
UDI. So
Yeah, and kind of a quick plug for another Greenlight partner, Read Tech. They're experts when it comes to UDI. They have lots of great webinars. I believe they're available on demand, so you might go check those out too. It's very insightful if you have questions about UDI. All right, so we have time for probably two more questions. Folks, I know a lot of you have questions that we're not going to get to today. And of course, be sure to reach out to Kyle and the Rook team. You can see his contact information on the screen if we don't get to that today. Next question comes from Nick. Nick asks, would a third-party service / refurb org for devices be considered an economic operator?
yeah, so there is actually a section tied to people that are servicing or refurbishing devices. If you send me your email, I can follow up. I don't know off the top of my head. But yeah, that is part of the economic operator umbrella. So making sure that you have the sufficient scope of quality system for your company and process.
Okay, and this will be the last question for today. So this comes from Greg, and Alan asked a question about SPR2, about a template. But Greg's question is, can you discuss expectations for updates to SPR's risk management documentation, labeling, etc., for existing devices on the market prior to the MDR going live? Are we expected to go through and update all device documentation, or do we just need to have updates to our QMS in place by 2020? This is a doozy of a question, and I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer Greg's question.
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of tied a little bit to the transition as well. So if your device is grandfathered into transition, all the supporting SPR stuff is tied to that device, but you still want to have those procedures in place in your QMS. And I talked a little bit about potentially you might have both procedures. We're going through that for essential requirements and SPRs if you still have some that are tied to that, but you need to have a very well-defined transition plan and review each of your devices and when they need to be updated, if they can be updated. There's, from some of the training I've done, situations where you might not be able to keep this product on the market, either due to lack of clinical data or lack of post-market surveillance data or lack of additional information that's required in MDR. So reviewing that transition plan and then incorporating the SPR updates with that as well.
I mean, long story short, Greg, at some point in time, if this is a product that you plan to keep in the EU market, there will be a point in time where you're going to have to update, regardless of how old or how really how old the product is or where the state of the documentation is. And I know a lot of companies are going through this process right now and evaluating, is there enough of a market need, opportunity that that makes sense to keep a product in place, because like I said, there's a good chance at some point in time, it may not be today, it might not be next year, but it will be soon, where you might have to update all the documentation associated with that. So just keep that in mind. And again, I encourage you all to reach out to your notified bodies. They should be good resources to help provide some guidance on this as well.